NetBackup licensing. So before we talk about the NetBackup licensing models, let's look into the major NetBackup components. So NetBackup has got four major components. Those are basically clients, agents, servers, and options. Clients are basically the systems from which the data has to be protected. Agents are basically the computers which are running some kind of application and database in it. So for an example, we can take Oracle SQL servers, from which the data has to be consistently protected, right? So servers are basically the master and media servers, are master or media servers, which basically instruct the clients to perform the backups and have them sent to the target storage devices. This target storage devices can be a kind of a disk pool or a tape, or can be a cloud storage as well. So options are basically the optional features which we can use in the NetBackup domain. So there's a basically deduplication, accelerator, open storage, NDMP, tape drive sharing, and etc. So when we talk about the NetBackup architecture, it has got two different tiers. So the first one is two-tier architecture, the second one is three-tier architecture. Two-tier architecture is also called as standard architecture, which has got two major components in it, which is basically NetBackup server and the NetBackup standard clients. Whereas the three-tier architecture will be having three different components in it. Those are basically the NetBackup enterprise servers, which has the master plus multiple number of media servers in it, and under that there will be multiple number of standard and enterprise clients, right? So we'll look into this standard and enterprise clients and what does this media and master server do a little later. So let's get into the licensing models. So NetBackup licensing models, it has got two types. One is basically the platform based model, capacity model. It is also called as capacity model. Other one is standard model. So please do note, these models cannot be mixed into the same NetBackup domain. If you are going with the capacity model on a particular NetBackup domain, you will need to stick to that. But NetBackup still give an option to convert from the capacity model to standard model, but you cannot mix these two models into the same NetBackup domain. So looking into the platform based model, which is also called as capacity model, this particular model calculates the licensing based on the source data that is being protected. Okay, let's take an example. So let's say that we have an infrastructure which is having one master server, two media servers in that, and you have some 10 Windows servers, 10 Unix servers, and two storage boxes, right? So if you are going with platform based license, that is the capacity license, you will need to pay for the amount of data which you back up from all this 10 Windows servers, 5 Unix servers, and 2 NDMP hosts. Okay, this is basically irrespective of the number of time you back up this data. So let's say this 10 Windows servers are hosting 10 terabyte of data, and 5 Unix servers are hosting 5 terabyte, and 2 NDMP are basically hosting 20 terabyte. So if you're gonna back up this 35 TB of data every week full backup, or say it as every day full backup, so irrespective of the number of time you backup, you got to pay for the front-end data which you backup from the server. They call it as front-end terabyte. So in our case, it's going to be 35 terabyte license you got to purchase to run this infrastructure. So the platform-based licensing has got two different editions. One is basically the complete, other one is NDMP edition. Complete edition covers all of the features. NDMP edition purely for the NDMP backups. So if in a case you want to reduce the licensing fee and do some kind of backups only for the NDMP storage devices, what you can do is that you can buy the you can build a separate NetBackup domain which is in the capacity model, and have this NetBackup NDMP edition license put over there, which will actually do a capacity based backup. But when you're going with NDMP edition, you will not get the other features. It is purely for the NDMP. So a platform based model is recommended. That's because it covers up all of the license. You don't need to have headache in maintaining the multiple number of features, right? So when you talk about the standard model is also called as traditional licensing model, which is basically based on the number of clients, agents, servers, and options that use in the NetBackup domain. So let's going back to the same example. Let's say we have the master server running two media servers into that, and you have some 10 Windows servers, 10 no 5 Unix clients, 2 NDMP host. So what you gotta do is that if you're going with the standard model, you will need to pay for each component in the infrastructure. So in our case, it's going to be you will need to buy license for one master, two media server, 10 Windows servers, 10 5 Unix servers, two NDMP host, or if in a case you are having some kind of application servers like SQL DB server, Oracle DB server, you will need to buy license for each of the nodes, each of the servers. You don't need to buy license based on the number of database you host. You go to buy license for each host which is hosting the application. So let's say that you are having an SQL server which is hosting some 10 database in it. You will need to buy license for the particular server. If you're having two servers which are hosting 20 database in each server, you will need to buy two SQL server license, right? So like that, you will need to buy separate license for SQL, SAP, Oracle, all of that. And on the target storage device, if you are actually if you're planning to use tape devices or disk storage libraries, you will need to buy separate license for them as well. But if in the case you're going with the platform based model, that is capacity model, you don't need to pay for anything because everything is covered in the same capacity model. All of the features are covered in the capacity model. So the licensing steps to follow: choose the licensing model, size the environment, prepare for the code. So here are the list of features covered in the platform based complete edition. So the platform based model basically covers up almost all of the features. Enterprise client, standard client, enterprise server, NetBackup server, data protection optimization, NetBackup application, DB pack, SAP agent, NDMP agent. You name any feature in NetBackup is covered, except a couple of features like MSEO and few other stuff, right? So as you see in here, the MSEO, that is media server encryption option, is not included in the NetBackup platform per terabyte licensing model. This is something you got to buy separate. But if you are actually planning to use some kind of encryption methods, you can still use this KMS, which actually comes with the NetBackup platform model. That is what we do actually. So this particular licensing model or this particular NetBackup encryption feature basically do a hardware-based encryption, right? So we can still go with this particular feature if you're planning to go with some encryption stuff. So the second one, the NDMP edition, has got these components which are basically NetBackup Enterprise Server, NDMP option, and it comes with NetBackup shared storage option. Shared storage option is basically if in a case you are having a tape library which you wanna share between multiple media servers, you can use this option to share the tape library to the multiple media servers. So that comes with this. So the SSO comes with NetBackup platform licensing as well. So basically whatever the feature you see under NDMP edition is covered in platform model, but only thing is that if you want to cut down the licensing fee and you're thinking to utilize this licensing model for the NDMP alone, you can go with the platform based NDMP edition. So capacity based licensing calculation steps. So if you want to calculate the amount of data you're protecting, or you want to see how much license you got to purchase, so what you can do is that there is a utility from the backup which is basically called as NB deploy utility, okay, which is available for the customer download. So this utility can be used to identify the amount of data being backed up. So this particular utility basically collects the data for both capacity and traditional, but there are a couple of attributes you got to play around to capture the right information. So this utility can be used, and there is one other thing called there is one other feature in NetBackup App Center, or basically it's a kind of report which you got to pull in, which it is gonna again use the same kind of utility to pull out the report, but this is kind of available in the App Center as well. So what are the things you got in here? Front-end terabyte is defined. So when you run this NB deploy utility, this basically captures information of last 19 days only. Okay, so that is something you got to make a note. And if you are having database archive backups, our database full backups running, it might show kind of there may be a discrepancy in the actual number and the report output. So it is always recommended that you actually capture this information directly from the database application and have that compared with the nb deploy utility output, because there are high chances that it might give a wrong number for the archive backups if in a case the archive backups are scheduled to happen multiple times every day. So this basically uh, covers up the no, archive backups which happens in for 24 hours and give that number over there. But we have seen few cases wherein which it shows the wrong number or kind of a slight variance comparing the actual archive backup and this report data. So it is always recommended that you get this number from the Oracle DB and have it compared. And if in a case you are seeing any kind of discrepancy, you are good to take up this with Semantic to clarify, or basically with Veritas. So if in a case you're going with the traditional model, you need to determine the number of clients to be protected. When we say clients, it can be a standard client which is basically protected LAN based, or it can be an enterprise client which basically takes the data over a SAN, or it can be a kind of a advanced client, something like an hypervisor which hosts multiple number of virtual machines in it. Okay, this all basically comes into the enterprise client. So you will need to determine the application servers and database servers. It needs to be protected because we will need to buy a license for each database service and the application servers. So determine the number of and type of NetBackup servers required. So you will need to identify how many master and media servers you need, and you got to buy a license for that. So when I talk about the NetBackup servers and enterprise clients, when you are going with the standard model, you will need to identify, or you will need to buy the NetBackup server license based on the tier information. Okay, this is purely applicable for the NetBackup servers, which are basically master and media server and present enterprise client. So how do you identify the tier information? Is basically based on the number of processors your service runs. So if you look into this server tier definition table, which usually talks about the different tier you got, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, and on your left, so if in a case you're going with Windows or Linux operating system, that will be WLS. If in a case that particular server is having one core on it, you will need to buy tier 1 license, right? If in a case you are going with Unix operating system, and if the server is having 1 to 2 sockets, you will need to buy tier 1 license. So by using this table, you can easily identify the tier information which you got to buy. So this is something you got to make a note when you are buying the license for NetBackup master, media servers, and enterprise clients. Standard clients, you don't need to think of it because standard client does not count this tier information. So the fourth one is basically disk-based infrastructure components. So I didn't know whether I mentioned this earlier. When you are going with the traditional model, if in a case you are planning to use some kind of what is it called? Some kind of disk storage libraries, you will need to pay them per terabyte. So you will need to buy a license called DPOO, Data Protection Optimization License. So that particular license has to be purchased per terabyte. Okay. So if in a case you are actually planning to use tape-based infrastructure components, you will need to buy a license for each tape. And if in a case you are planning to use SSO and all of that, you will need to buy separate license for that. So the optional components like MSCO, NDMP, for all of them you got to buy separate licenses. Those are basically host-based licenses. And even for the Op Center and the backup search, you got to think and buy. So if you look into this important note, it says except standard clients, remaining all servers needs to be purchased based on the hardware tier it runs. So this particular table actually help us to identify the tier information. And here is the high level view on what features are covered under what particular the servers or licensing model basically. So this particular BMR is basically with standard and enterprise client. If you look into features like accelerator, which basically comes with data protection optimization. Alright. So what are the features which basically relates to the disk library stuff will be covered in data protection optimization license only. So like AAR, MSDP, client duplication, accelerator, optimized duplication. All of them are basically covered in covered with data protection optimization. So if you're planning to use any of this NetBackup feature, you got to identify the respective the component and purchase that licensing component, purchase that. I'm just gonna pause for a minute. We'll come back. Thank you.